year is 1991. The arcade era is slowly fading in the rearview mirror, and gamers have only one question on their minds. How can I get a hold of a 16-bit console? Classics will be released, franchises will be launched, and the first shots have been fired in the war that would come to define gaming for the rest of the decade. These are the top 40 best-selling video games of 1991. Number 40. ActRaiser. Dropping a few positions from 1990, ActRaiser managed to just about hold on to its spot in the top 40 following its global release. But this game's lasting legacy would live on far beyond the 90s, re-releasing on mobile and Wii Virtual Console, and even receiving a complete remake by Square Enix in 2021's ActRaiser Renaissance. While 1991 will be the last time we see ActRaiser in this series, it remains a classic that's frequently listed among the best Super Nintendo games of all time. Be sure to check out the 1990 episode for more on this fan favorite and many others. Number 39. Road Rash. In Road Rash, you take on the role of a biker competing in illegal street races across California. The twist here is you engage in melee combat, punching and kicking rival racers to gain an edge and win the race. A cash-based progression system lets you upgrade your bike, and tracks are realistic and immersive, and police even jump in occasionally to try to arrest you. Two-player hot seat mode allows head-to-head action, which was a relative rarity on the Genesis. Road Rash became a hallmark of 1990s gaming, symbolizing the rebellious fun of the Sega console. Number 38. NES Open Tournament Golf. Hit the links with Mario and Luigi across 6 global regions. NES Open Tournament Golf owes much of its commercial success to the popularity of the two Plumbing brothers, since beyond this it's a fairly bog-standard golf sim. There were some interesting features such as a battery backup allowing progress saving, dynamic weather, and unique character stats, but many real golf fans had already moved on to the 16-bit era with titles like PGA Tour and Hal's Hole-in-One. Number 37. Double Dragon 3. In Double Dragon 3, The Sacred Stones, Billy and Jimmy Lee must rescue Marion, who's been kidnapped by a mysterious organization. Featuring side-scrolling beat-em-up action for 1 or 2 players, the game received mixed reviews, with high praise for its late 8-bit graphics, but some critics found it repetitive and overly difficult. The memorable soundtrack and realistic art style stood out compared to earlier NES beat-em-ups. Interestingly, this console version was actually developed in parallel with the arcade version, even with its own unique story, rather than simply porting it over after. Number 36. Castlevania 2 Belmont's Revenge. Not to be confused with Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, which came out 3 years earlier on the NES, Belmont's Revenge tells the story of Christopher Belmont, who must rescue his son who's been kidnapped and turned into a demon by Dracula. The game is a sequel to the first Game Boy Castlevania in 1989, with improved graphics and gameplay compared to its predecessor. Castlevania 2 is one of the first Game Boy games to feature a password system for saving progress, and fans especially appreciated the impressive handheld music and visuals. Number 35. Final Fantasy Legend 3. Who doesn't love a good time travel JRPG? 4 years before Chrono Trigger, there was Final Fantasy Legend 3, the story of 4 warriors fighting to stop a catastrophic flood. There are hidden levels, a character transformation system, diverse boss designs, excellent graphics and music, an engaging storyline, and even time travel mechanics where actions in different eras impact each other. Regarded by many as one of the best RPGs on the Game Boy, the game sold well in late 1991, though it would need to wait until 93 to release in the West, where it suffered from a general lack of interest in the genre. Number 34. Final Fantasy Adventure. That's right, 2 Final Fantasy Game Boy games in a row if you can believe it, but the 2 games were actually quite different from each other. While Legend was a classic JRPG, Adventure was instead an action RPG with real-time combat. The story, centered around a gladiator slave who escapes captivity to rescue a girl with a magical pendant, was a highlight for many players, but positive reviews mainly praised the graphics, music, and gameplay. By far the most interesting thing about Final Fantasy Adventure is that despite being a Final Fantasy game, it also serves as the first game in the Mana series, which is still going strong today with 2024's release of Visions of Mana. Number 33. Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge. The first Mega Man game on a portable console, Dr. Wily's Revenge features the villain's return, this time with a new weapon designed specially as a Mega Man killer. Like in other games, when you defeat a boss, you get their special weapon for use in other stages. Sometimes called a must-play for fans of the series, modern retrospectives highlight its influence on later games, such as with elements like the boss rush structure and with 2 sets of robot masters. Number 32. Yoshi. In Yoshi, for the NES and Game Boy, Mario and Yoshi team up to clear falling enemies from the screen by stacking and matching them. The game was the first collaboration between Nintendo and gaming magazine turned developer Game Freak. I promise you this will not be the final entry for them in this decade. Coming during what can only be described as a vertical puzzle craze in the early 90s, Yoshi sold well despite not launching beyond Japan until 2 years later. Number 31, Operation C. Operation C is the third title in the Contra series and the first to release on a handheld. Players control Bill Riser on a mission to neutralize an enemy force storing an alien cell. It's a run-and-gun platformer with 5 stages, alternating between side view and top view perspectives. Criticized by some for over-similarity to Super C on the NES, the game was nevertheless successful enough to continue the series and has become something of a cult classic among Contra and Game Boy enthusiasts. In case you're wondering, the C doesn't actually stand for Contra, it stands for Commando. Number 30, Ultraman. Ultraman is a fighting game where you control the titular Ultraman and battle various monsters in 3-minute rounds. The story follows Ultraman's mission to save the planet from destruction, blending action with the iconic Ultraman lore. For the uninitiated, Ultraman is a Japanese pop culture phenomenon from the 60s that spawned a TV series that's 30 seasons strong as of 2025 and is still going, in addition to spin-offs, movies, and of course dozens of video games. Rather surprisingly, the game released in North America in the same year as Japan, but I'm not sure anyone noticed. Number 29, Battletoads. Control one of 3 Battletoads as they embark on a mission to rescue Princess Angelica from the evil Dark Queen. In this side-scrolling action platformer with beat-em-up elements, you can punch, kick, use special moves, and collect power-ups and weapons in single-player or 2-player co-op mode. The game was developed by Rare, who would eventually of course create some of the biggest Nintendo games of all time, as well as branching out to other platforms like with 2018's Sea of Thieves. Battletoads rose back to prominence in 2011 when 4chan users organized a mass prank call of the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, of Pawn Stars fame, where people would call up and ask if the store had any copies of the game. The frustrated responses from the show's star Rick Harrison became fodder for many hilarious YouTube videos, leading to the show eventually giving in and displaying a copy on set in later episodes. Number 28, Wing Commander 2. Wing Commander 2 is a stunning game that really showcased the superior capabilities of PCs for those that could afford it. The continuing story unfolds of Christopher Blair, a court-martialed and exiled protagonist from the first game as he battles Kilrathi forces, uncovers a traitor, and seeks redemption to prevent the destruction of Terran homeworlds. The game popularized Sound Blaster, shaping PC gaming audio standards for years to come, and influenced the kind of cinematic storytelling and voice acting that would become popular among other space sims. Number 27, Pilotwings. Another returning title from 1990 that expanded globally this year, Pilotwings was cemented as a successful launch title and continued to showcase the power of Nintendo's new system. But amazingly, the game was developed in only 15 months, a feat that sounds nearly impossible to our modern ears. Pilotwings eventually received 2 sequels, returning once again as a launch title for the N64, and once more with Pilotwings Resort for the 3DS. Number 26, Civilization. Sid Meier's Civilization is a turn-based strategy game where players lead a civilization from 4000 BC all the way into the future. You can choose from 14 different civilizations, and your goal is to achieve dominance through military conquest or by winning the space race to Alpha Centauri. The game achieved massive success and launched a popular franchise that's still going strong today. This despite costing only $170,000 to develop, or about $400,000 adjusted for inflation in 2025, and dispensing with frills like multiplayer, with Meyer famously stating, "If you had friends, you wouldn't need to play computer games." You really cut us deep with that one, Sid. Number 25, Nintendo World Cup. Nintendo World Cup is a soccer game where you lead a national team through a World Cup tournament, starting with Cameroon and ending with West Germany. You might be surprised to learn that Nintendo World Cup supports up to 4 players. That's right, this game is one of just a handful for the NES that supported multi-tap accessories like the Fourscore, allowing you to challenge up to 3 of your friends in a versus match. The inclusion of unrealistic field types like ice and stone adds a humorous twist, making traditional soccer gameplay more chaotic and fun. Number 24, Mega Man 4. In the action platformer Mega Man 4, Mega Man returns to battle the Russian scientist Dr. Cossack, though a surprise twist reveals a more sinister plot. This fourth entry in the mainline series introduces new items and weapons like the new Mega Buster, and your faithful robot dog Rush returns from Mega Man 3. Interestingly, the 8 robot masters you fight at the end of each stage were designed by fans through a contest held in Japan. 70,000 entries were submitted, with the top 8 winning a spot in the game and an exclusive golden cartridge. Since only 8 of these were ever made, this cartridge is one of the rarest ever released, though they do go up for sale on occasion. Number 23, The Legend of the Mystical Ninja. In this 2-player co-op side-scroller, guide Kid Ying and Dr. Yang through an investigation of strange events in Japan after a ghost woman kidnaps Princess Yuki. Each stage usually begins with a town section where you can play unique minigames like a first-person maze, air hockey, trivia, whack-a-mole, and lottery, earning money to purchase items. Mystical Ninja was the first of the popular Japanese Goemon series to be localized in North America, where it flopped. Despite this setback, the series continued to be popular in Japan well into the 21st century. Number 22, Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Following up on NES's Ghouls and Ghosts, Super Ghouls and Ghosts continues the adventure of the Knight Arthur as he endeavors to save Princess Guinevere and rid the kingdom of the Ghoul Emperor Sardius. Like in the previous game, Arthur's armor will be destroyed if you're hit by an enemy, forcing you to run around in your underpants. Super Ghouls and Ghosts features a reduced emphasis on run and gun and 4 new difficulty modes, making the game more accessible to casual gamers, but only just, as there were still many complaints about the high difficulty level, leading to reports of some rental stores refusing to carry the game due to customer frustration. It was a commercial success nonetheless, encouraging Capcom to create many sequels, with the most recent entry in the series releasing in 2021 for the Nintendo Switch. Number 21, Final Fight. Originally an arcade game released in 1989, Final Fight for the Super Nintendo has the player fighting through Metro City to rescue your daughter Jessica. Fans of the original arcade version were initially disappointed by the exclusion of co-op multiplayer, but regardless, the game sold well and became a classic example of its genre that had a huge influence over the rest of the decade. Final Fight maintains a cult following to this day, with beat-em-up enthusiasts debating its merits and rediscovering the many versions available, such as the Japanese original that was heavily censored for Western audiences. Final Fight returns twice more on the Super Nintendo, with sequels in '93 and '95. Number 20, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. Rescue Rangers was a 2-player co-op side-scrolling platformer where the famous Disney rodents must save their friend Gadget, who's been kidnapped by the villainous Fat Cat. Map-based level selection allows non-linear progression similar to the Mega Man series, and indeed that makes sense since this game was developed by the same team. Narrative depth is added by cutscenes between levels, and the ability to throw objects as weapons like acorns and crates adds strategic depth to combat. Part of Capcom's successful Disney licensed games, a late NES sequel came out in 1993. Number 19, Ms. Pac Man. The classic 1982 arcade title Ms. Pac Man finally came to mainstream home consoles in 1990 with an unlicensed port by Atari subsidiary Tengen, and in 1991 it was further ported to the Genesis. Because of licensing issues similar to those faced by Tengen in 1990 with Tetris, the NES version's sales suffered, but the Genesis version sold well with over 1 million copies over its lifetime. This version featured improved graphics compared to the NES, extra mazes, different difficulty levels, and 2-player simultaneous play with Pac Man and Ms. Pac Man together. Did you know Ms. Pac Man was originally going to be called Miss Pac Man, but given the scene in the game where she and Pac Man have a baby together, and concerns about the implication that the two had their child out of wedlock, she was renamed Mrs. Pac Man and then finally Ms. Pac Man. Legend has it that all these changes were made with less than 3 days to go before the game was deployed to production. Number 18, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. In The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Link is awakened by Princess Zelda's telepathic plea for help as she's imprisoned by the evil wizard Aghanim in Hyrule Castle. To stop him from freeing Ganon in the Dark World, collect 3 pendants to wield the Master Sword. Link to the Past's unique parallel worlds, diverse dungeons, large interconnected overworld, and in-depth story combined with a strong lasting pedigree from the first game, resulting in both commercial and critical success. Often listed as one of the best Super Nintendo games of all time, this third game in the series is remembered for its return to form, for introducing many series staples, and of course for Koji Kondo's memorable soundtrack. Released in Japan late in the year, A Link to the Past would come out worldwide in 1992, eventually becoming one of the console's best-selling titles. Number 17, The Simpsons: Bart vs. the Space Mutants. The Simpsons first aired on Fox on December 17, 1989. Since then, there have been an astounding 36 seasons of nearly 800 episodes. The multimedia franchise is estimated to have grossed $5 billion in revenue over its lifetime and has also had a massive cultural impact, especially in the West. It only makes sense then that the series has also spawned over 20 video games, the very first of which to release on console was Bart vs. the Space Mutants for the NES. In this side-scrolling platformer, you play as Bart, who discovers that Space Mutants are invading Springfield disguised as humans in a bid to take over the world. Bart can run, jump, and use spray paint to change the color of objects, with objectives like hiding all purple items or collecting all hats in each level. A version would come out for the Sega Genesis in 1992 with improved graphics and sound. Number 16, Streets of Rage. Sega's answer to the Super Nintendo's port of Final Fight, the first-party title Streets of Rage became a signature title. In marketing the game, Sega stressed the multiplayer aspect that Final Fight lacked, and it received critical acclaim on launch, with Electronic Gaming Monthly saying in 1991 that it was the best beat-em-up game of all time and superior to those available on Nintendo platforms. The game, which pretty much like every game in the genre revolved around beating a crime syndicate and restoring order to the city, spawned sequels in 93, 94, and 2020? That's right, Streets of Rage 4 came out a full quarter decade after the third, a testament to the lasting legacy and impact of this series. Number 15, Castle of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse. Rising 2 positions from 1990, this Disney tie-in was still raking in plenty of dough in 1991. The game was developed in under a year by Sega's AM7 team, a tight schedule for a 1990 Genesis title, leading to intense time crunch where programmers slept in the office to meet the 1990 holiday deadline. The hard work paid off because despite a few glitches here and there, the game was a big success, expanding Sega's brand especially among younger gamers. Number 14, DuckTales. Yet another Disney tie-in, this one coming out way back in 1989, DuckTales slides a few positions from 1990 but maintains a respectable position solidly within the top 15. Matt Bozon, the creative director of 2013's DuckTales Remastered, agreed with contemporary reviews that the music of DuckTales ranked among some of the best in the 8-bit era and reused a lot of it for the remake. About 3 million copies were sold in total over the game's lifetime, with a roughly equal split between NES and Game Boy, making the game Capcom's highest selling ever on both platforms. Number 13, F-Zero. Falling just a couple of spots from 1990's 11th place finish, F-Zero proved to be an effective launch title for the Super Nintendo, showcasing the superior 16-bit graphics and fast-paced and smooth action racing. The high-energy soundtrack and high skill cap added to replayability and made this a game that fans came back to even years later. The difficulty also made this one of the first titles where dads everywhere started to realize that they wouldn't be able to keep up with the kids forever. Number 12, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Riding the wave of Turtlemania, TMNT for the NES kept on going in 1991. Contemporary reviews were mixed, but tilted towards positive. Unfortunately, the game has aged poorly, and most modern retrospectives focus on the unreasonable difficulty and cryptic design. This perception was forever cemented in the collective gamer consciousness in 2006, when Angry Video Game Nerd made it the subject of what would become one of his most popular episodes. Number 11, Super Mario Bros. Yet another returning title from 1990's list, and by far the oldest game on this list, Super Mario Bros. Maintained its strong sales this year almost entirely due to its bundling with the NES Action Set, which remained the most popular version of the system. In fact, it wouldn't be until the late twilight years of the aging console in 1992 and 93 when the Challenge Set, bundled with Super Mario Bros. 3, would overtake the Action Set in popularity. The Action Set also came with the famous Zapper Gun and Duck Hunt. While not included separately in this list, Duck Hunt had its own significant impact on the gaming landscape due to its simplistic yet addictive showcasing of modern Nintendo tech. Technically, other games like Hogan's Alley and Wild Gunman were compatible with the Zapper, but for most, the nostalgia of sitting in front of their CRT TVs and blasting away at mallards is what they associate most with this iconic peripheral. We've made it to the exciting conclusion of 1991 as we count down the top 10 best-selling games of the year. Brand new classics, returning favorites, a spark of life from the PC platform, and a spiky blue phenom will all be contenders, but who will be crowned best-selling game of the year? Before we get to that, we have a few honorable mentions. Micro Machines. A top-down racer with innovative no-split-screen multiplayer, creative environmental interaction, and colorful graphics that push the NES to its limits, Micro Machines released to wide acclaim with players and critics heaping praise on this nostalgic cult classic. A messy legal battle with Nintendo over licensing hurt sales, so unfortunately Micro Machines didn't quite make the cut this year. Duke Nukem. When I say Duke Nukem, I know a number of you are immediately picturing a Doom-style 3D first-person shooter, but did you know it all started way back in 1991 with a 2D side-scrolling platformer game? Published by the same company as Commander Keen, the game did fairly well considering the state of PC gaming at the time, but unfortunately not well enough to land a spot in the top 40. ToeJam and Earl. Eventually becoming a sleeper hit and selling an impressive 350,000 lifetime copies, ToeJam and Earl was deemed a commercial failure on launch in 1991. A somewhat bizarre and surreal comic satire, the game was loved by critics and gamers for the co-op experience, focus on exploration, and quirky humor. The game's creator Greg Johnson apparently named it after a friend's real-life toe injury. Make sure to check out our video on video game flops of the 90s for more on this one and plenty of other hidden gems. But now on to the top 10. Number 10, Final Fantasy IV. Final Fantasy enters the 16-bit era with Final Fantasy IV. The deep and dramatic story follows the Dark Knight Cecil, who embarks on a journey of redemption. The game introduced many series firsts, not the least of which were its groundbreaking visuals, contributing to a game so huge that a full quarter of it had to be cut just to fit on the Super Nintendo cartridge, though some would be brought back in later remakes. Critics raved and fans loved it then as much as they still do today, which is probably why Final Fantasy IV has been re-released no fewer than 10 times. Number 9, SimCity. Topping out at number 31 on our 1990 list, SimCity returns this year, but this time with a significant overhaul as it blasts onto the console scene. With the addition of the colorful advisor Dr. Wright, unique Japanese-styled architecture, various Nintendo Easter eggs to discover, and smooth and intuitive controls, SimCity proved that if done right, complex simulation games could work just as well on console platforms as they do on the PC. Did you know an NES version was originally planned but cancelled in favor of focusing on the Super Nintendo version? A prototype of the NES cartridge was discovered more than 25 years later in 2017, and you can still find ROMs of this copy online. Number 8, Altered Beast. Altered Beast, released in 1989, was still going strong in 1991 due to being bundled with the Genesis system up until this point. The side-scrolling beat-em-up was designed to showcase arcade-level quality in your own home, and while it accomplished this goal, critical response was somewhat muted, with some remarking on the game's shortness and lack of depth. Despite this, many gamers feel nostalgic when remembering Altered Beast, especially its unique voice acting. Number 7, Lemmings. Selling 20 million copies over its lifetime, Lemmings quickly became one of the best-selling PC games of all time when it released in 1991. Based on the misconception perpetuated in popular culture that Lemmings are prone to jumping off cliffs en masse, in the game you have to use all the tools at your disposal to guide the little 8x8 pixel creatures to safety. While Lemmings eventually came out on pretty much every platform that existed in the early 90s, it's mostly remembered as an iconic home computer title where its influence is felt especially in the RTS genre with titles like 1994's Warcraft. Number 6, Super Mario Land. This Game Boy launch title falls a few positions from last year to number 6, but nonetheless remains an important part of the gaming landscape in '91. While Super Mario Land is not generally listed among the best Mario games of all time, its historical significance as the proving ground for high-quality handheld platformers and mildly oddball nature make this entry memorable for many. Super Mario Land will go on to become the third best-selling original Game Boy game ever over its lifetime. Number 5, Sonic the Hedgehog. Finally we come to it, the game that solidified Genesis as a true Nintendo competitor, at least in the West, and the mascot Sega needed to rival the mega success of Super Mario. Taking over console bundling from Altered Beast, Sonic the Hedgehog was a revolutionary and polarizing platformer that focused on speed and momentum-based movement. Created via an internal contest at Sega, Sonic was the perfect match for Sega's cool blast processing image. Where Mario was friendly, brave, and family-oriented, Sonic was rebellious and cool. While Mario was a slightly plump Italian plumber, Sonic was a slim, Michael Jackson-inspired spiky blue hedgehog. And whereas Mario games rewarded precision and exploration, Sonic games put speed above all else. Number 4, Super Mario Bros. 3. You might find it a little hard to believe, but a game for the 8-year-old NES system takes the spot just outside of the podium in 1991, owing to the massive install base of the console, bundling with the challenge set, and the sheer brilliance of the title. In fact, even though it came out back in '88, no NES title that came after it would ever match the Super Mario Bros. 3 juggernaut in lifetime sales. The game was such a hit, it even spawned a short-lived but fondly remembered television series called The Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3. Number 3. Dr. Mario. It has to be said, there were a lot of these falling block puzzle games being released in the early 90s. Some critics at the time even threw around words like plagiarism, describing what they considered a cynical attempt to capitalize on the success of Tetris. A fair assessment, or missing the broader context? After all, most first-person shooters were called Doom clones following that game's success in 1993. Whatever the case, the addictive gameplay and franchise tie-in made Dr. Mario an all-time top 10 bestseller on both the Game Boy and the NES, and the game became a cornerstone of the puzzle genre. Dr. Mario has had many sequels and remakes, even releasing in a 2-pack Super Nintendo game alongside its rival Tetris in 1994. Number 2. Super Mario World. Releasing in August in North America alongside the Super Nintendo console, Super Mario World shoots way up the list in 1991 to capture the silver position. You know how occasionally we highlight games that were developed on a shoestring budget in an amazingly short amount of time? Super Mario World was definitely not one of those games. Development for this, the flagship title of Nintendo's 16-bit system, was a significant undertaking, taking over 3 years and involving 16 different people. Shigeru Miyamoto, the game's producer, originally wanted Mario to ride a horse because the man loved him some horses, but ultimately they went with the cute green dinosaur Yoshi instead. Did you know, in the Japanese version of the game, Yoshi can actually eat dolphins? In the West, this was cut on account of cultural sensibilities. Number 1. Tetris. Emerging from the Soviet Union in 1988, it's hard to oversell just how huge Tetris was in the early 90s. It wasn't just a game, it was a cultural phenomenon that transcended boundaries. The theme song from the game was covered by Andrew Lloyd Webber and charted in the top 10 in some countries. T-shirts and hats were everywhere. Tetris was referenced in sitcoms, talk shows, and movies. Journalists and psychologists even began to recognize a condition called Tetris effect, where players start seeing Tetris-like patterns in dreams and mental images, such as fitting shapes together in real life. Make sure you check out the 1990 video for the interesting story of how Tetris first came to the West. That's all for 1991. What's your favorite game of this year? Let us know in the comments. Are you a rebellious, speed-obsessed Sonic fan? Did you dive into the deep and timeless stories of the RPGs? Or perhaps you were the more cerebral type, spending hours staring at the maps of Civilization or skylines of SimCity. Up next, 1992. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the excitement of this remarkable era.